everybody, to the Hurdyburg Internet Broadcast Network. Happy New Year. And I've got a good friend and a client on the phone tonight, or the podcast, I should say. Actually, we're on computer doing a podcast tonight. Mr. Tom Britton. Tom, can you say hi?
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year. May it be a magical year for you.
That's funny you should mention it, Tom. Well, anyhow, guys, we are, Tom is the first broadcast of the year. We took a break after December, and now we're cranking back up for the next year. So if you're hearing this and you want to be a guest on the Hurdyburg Broadcast Network, the podcast, and you're a business owner in Austin, I do this absolutely at no charge, Tom. You believe that?
I can't believe it, Hurdy, because it's priceless.
Well, it is, because you know what? You get to tell people about the things that they may not know about you every single day, right? We can dig into some of the stuff with some of the businesses, so customers have a chance and potential clients to find you. Tom, again, welcome to the show. And you know what? I don't like to read a little bit about my client's background, so I'm going to let you tell me a little bit about yourself. So jump in.
All right. Well, I'm a native Austinite. There's a caveat in there. I left here when I was a year old. Dad finished law school at UT and moved to Houston. So,
cheater.
Yeah, but technically, I'm a native Austinite. I was born in Seton Hospital. But I got back here 9 years ago and absolutely love it. It's good to be back home again.
And you're an author and speaker and musician, and we're going to focus on your book tonight, The Magic of Change, and talk a little bit about magic, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about how you became an author? I'm curious to know that.
I guess by way of being a bank president would be the shortest answer. And going back even further is how I got interested in magic. That was back in elementary school. A magician came to our school and did a show there in the auditorium. Really taken with it. So I started reading books and buying magic tricks, and started attending the state magicians convention. And it's something else, Hurdy. You know, you look back at your early life, and many of the things that you did, experienced, and people you met there end up having an impact on your later life. And that was true with magic, because there I met my future wife. I met the my co-author of The Magic of Change. And as a kid, I thought, boy, when I grow up, I want to be a magician. Well, that didn't happen. I went off to the University of North Texas, not knowing what in the world I wanted to major in. Came home, got a summer job in a bank. Well, I changed my major to banking and finance, got my degree in banking from University of North Texas, then went to the Graduate School of Banking at SMU. Set a goal that I wanted to be president of a bank by the time I was 35. And, you know, boy, you talk about the power of setting written goals. Now, of course, January, this is the time, if you haven't already, set your written goals for this year and beyond. But because I'd written it down and had a timeline, when I was 35, I had 3 banks ask me to be their CEO. And I chose the one that was closest to our house because it was the biggest challenge. It was a independent community bank. It had been open a couple of years and was not doing well at all. They were in serious trouble. So they brought me in to turn it around. Well, needless to say, there were many changes that needed to be made. There was a staff of we had about 34 people. Trying to get 34 people to all buy into the changes that need to be made is not easy. In the book, long story short, turned the bank around, spent the next 7 years there, while other banks in the recession of in Texas back in the 80s were going broke. We were posting record profits. Other companies and conventions kept bringing me in to talk. And they said, how did you do that? And I said, we made the right changes at the right time. You got to know when to change and when to hang in there. And they started saying, you ought to do this full time. So I waited until my kids were out of Baylor and I jumped off Mount Cashflow to become a full-time speaker.
Mount Cashflow. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah. It was, some people said, Tom, you're crazy. Why would you give up your bank car, your retirement account, a steady paycheck, expense account? And, you know, if you want to do something, you better do it. Take a risk every once in a while. Because, you know, if I didn't do that, I could see myself in a nursing home at the end of my life, kicking myself, saying, Tom, why didn't you go for it? As I told the other, they said, what if it doesn't work out? I said, I can always get back into banking. But it did work out. I've spoken now internationally and here in the United States in 34 states at company meetings and conferences.
Thank you for that story. That was great. Let's jump into your book tonight. So in the book, The Magic of Change, Tom, you remind us that nothing decreases productivity or stands in the way of reaching our goals more than the fear of change.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I found there are three kinds of people, three groups of people when it comes to change. And we certainly saw it there in the bank, and many of you will be able to identify with this and in your organization. And as I tell you the three, which one of the three would best describe you? The first person when it comes to change is who I call Aunt Ishii. Aunt Ishii doesn't like things the way they are, and she doesn't want them to change either. You tell Aunt Ishii to have a good day, she says, I've already made other plans, thank you. She doesn't like to change at all. And we had some of those at the bank. In fact, there were three Aunt Ishiis. Now, surprisingly, I was told that there used to be just one, but that one had infected two other healthy people.
Yeah.
We now had three Aunt Ishiis. So I set to work on trying to turn those Aunt Ishiis around, and two of them very successfully turned around into very positive change agents. One became supervisor of her department, but the one that started it all didn't want to change, and so we had to let her go, because those Aunt Ishiis in an organization, they're kind of like cancer. Unchecked, they'll spread. Now, at the other end of the spectrum are the Indiana Joneses. Da, 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 da. These people, man, they change? Absolutely. Let's go for it. Let's jump. Somebody's going to put a net before we hit the ground. Snakes, don't worry about it. There's a treasure somewhere. These people are gung-ho about change. And the positive of these people is that, boy, they provide some energy and enthusiasm to make changes and go towards new goals. The danger is they kind of go off half-cocked sometimes.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, I don't mind the Indiana Joneses in my organization. I'm like a football field. If they're running towards the goal, I'll leave them alone. He said, but even when they get out of bounds a little bit, I'll leave them alone. He said, but when they start running up in the stands, I have to corral them and say, whoa, 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 get out. And then the third group, Herdy, is the Sherlock Holmes. And that's probably the largest group. These people, they're willing to change, but let's study this first. Show me the facts. What are the consequences? What are the benefits of the change? Convince me. If any of you know someone who's been diagnosed with cancer, many of those people will research cancer to the point where they know as much about it as the doctor does.
Yeah.
Their body is going through some change, and the fear of change is mostly fear of the unknown. What's going to happen?
Yeah, if we only knew, right, Tom?
Yeah. But again, if you have a goal of where you're going, that'll keep you on track, a written goal.
Absolutely. And so I know you've spent, as you mentioned, beginning of the podcast, 25 years in the banking business, but is it true We talked a little bit about this. You had mentioned in your childhood you really wanted to grow up and be a magician.
Hey, I kind of did that, Herdy.
You did. I've seen you in action.
Because as a speaker, I use magic to demonstrate my key points instead of using PowerPoint or an overhead, something like that, because I found out that with a touch of magic, folks will easily remember the key points when it comes to the magic of change. I call change magic because it's like magic in many ways, Herdy. It's an illusion. People say, ooh, how'd you do that? You must be a magician. No, it's an illusion. I played a trick on you. And change is also an illusion. Now think about it. We are doing the same thing our ancestors did thousands of years ago. We're just doing it differently. I mean, there were, first paintings on cave walls, and then letters chiseled into stone, and then quill pens written on sheepskin, and then deeper fountain pens, ballpoint pens, typewriters, word processors, computers. Today, you merely have to speak into a device and it'll transcribe your words. We're still doing the same thing our ancestors did, and that is recording our thoughts. We're just doing it differently. The more things change, the more they remain the same. We're doing the same thing, only differently.
Yeah, and so you get through the illusion part, right? And in your book, In the Magic of Change, you write that much of change, and we talked about there's fear of change, but then there's also change as a matter of perception. So how's that?
Well, I think I'm best illustrated with a story. I was the keynote speaker at a convention in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And with my frequent flyer miles, I took my wife, Dina, with me. And we stayed on a couple of days after the convention just to enjoy that beautiful part of Pennsylvania. Dina spotted a garage sale. And she's very good at that. She can spot a garage sale a mile away. And at this garage sale, she bought this robin's egg blue pottery bowl with brown trim around the edge of it. And she bought it for our grandson, Jeffrey. And it was Jeffrey's cereal bowl, his Jell-O bowl, his ice cream bowl. I mean, that bowl was used and abused every time Jeffrey came over. And one night, we left it out on the kitchen counter, and we had another couple over for dinner. And I remember the lady picked it up. She looked at the bottom of the bowl, and she asked Dina, she said, "Where did you get this bowl?" Dina said, "Oh, we got that in Pennsylvania at a garage sale. It's our grandson Jeffrey's bowl." She said, "Do you mind my asking what you paid for it?" Dina said, I think I gave $1. She said, "Do you have any idea what this bowl is worth?" She proceeded to tell us that this bowl was made in the early 1900s by a very famous pottery company up in New Jersey, and it was worth a lot of money. That bowl now sits in our china cabinet behind locked doors. And when Jeffrey comes over, it's no, don't touch. Now, the important thing is the bowl hadn't changed at all, but our perceived value of that bowl had gone up tremendously. So I asked the listeners, what is the perceived value of the product or service that you offer? It's huge. Many times you don't need to change anything but perception. How is your product or service perceived? That's the first step in any sales process.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great story, right?
Well, I put it into action. There was a couple had a yogurt store. They'd bought a yogurt franchise up in Dallas, and it had been open 6 months, and they weren't doing very well. They'd heard me speak at a convention and brought me in to just see what ideas I could give them. Well, I had them, shine their floors and make sure their tables were clean and everything sparkled. Another thing, get your get your employees off their cell phones. Have them connect with the customer. Have them welcome them to your
Yeah.
place. But the biggest change we made was an illusion. When a customer comes in to get a small yogurt that's 5 ounces, they'd put 5 ounces in the cup, and before they'd hand it to the customer, they'd weigh it. And so I asked the boy who was behind the counter, I said, "Why are you weighing that?" He said, "Well, I guess so we don't cheat anybody." And
Ooh.
I said, "Yeah, but let me tell you how it looks to the customer. What's the matter? Are you afraid you're going to give me too much?" Here's the one change, the biggest change we made. And again, it was only an illusion. Yes, sir. Small chocolate yogurt. They turned around, they put 4 ounces in the cup, turned back towards the customer, looked at the cup, went back, put a fifth ounce in, turned with a wink and a smile, served it up to the customer. So now the customer is getting what? They're getting 5 ounces, but their perception is, wow, I'm getting more. Guess what? That business grew and grew. 2 years later, they bought a second franchise. And I hear that they sold them both and are now retired and touring the country in their motorhome.
There you go. Perception.
Perception. It was an illusion. Big change, though.
So far, Tom, we talked a little bit about the illusion of magic, the fear of change, and our business and our service or product being, a matter of perception to that client, right? So it's interesting. You took the word change and you say take the letter C out and then take the letter E out at the end of the word.
Yeah.
And you're left with the word hang.
Exactly.
So how do you know when to change and when just to hang in there?
Boy, that is the $50 million question. I'm telling you. And the short answer is look at things from your customer's point of view. For example, years ago, Pepsi challenged Coke, and Coke ended up changing their formula to New Coke. And it bombed. The customers didn't want it. They said, "We hate the new stuff. Why'd you change it? You should have hung in there." Automakers back in the 70s, America had an energy crisis, and they said, "We want fuel-efficient cars."
Yeah.
And Detroit either wouldn't or couldn't retool fast enough. And they said, "We're going to hang in there and wait for gas to get cheap again." In the meantime, Japan comes over, says, "You want fuel-efficient cars? You got it." Detroit lost forever its world dominance of the auto industry. So look at things from the customer's point of view. My favorite story is that of Anheuser-Busch. Somebody in the organization came up with a brilliant idea. He said, "Wow, if we start doing Budweiser in plastic long neck bottles, we've already done a study on this. Breakage is less. It costs less to ship because it doesn't weigh as much. And frankly, if you get in a bar fight, you're not going to get hurt getting hit in the head with a plastic beer bottle."
That's right.
So they said, it makes sense. We're going to make more money. The shelf life is longer in plastic than it is glass. But much to Anheuser-Busch's credit, they said, "Whoa, now before we do this, let's test it out and see what the customers say." Well, thank goodness they did. The customers hated it.
Yeah.
Hated it. They said there's something about peeling a label off a sweaty glass bottle.
Isn't that the truth?
It does. You can't do it with plastic. There's something about the sound of two glass bottles clinking together that just falls flat with plastic. Plus, they said, I would feel cheap and insensitive serving a plastic bottle of beer up to my guests. Yeah. So Anheuser-Busch says, we're going to hang in there. We're not going to change. I guess the point is, even if you're on the right track, if you're not moving, you're going to get run over, especially here in Central Texas, Austin, San Antonio corridor. Things are changing so quickly. But before you make change, look at things from the customer's point of view.
Real important point, Tom. I'm glad you talked about that, because I think I've even been telling people for years on working online with clients, right? Consulting, that the first thing they need to think about is their user and their customer, not about what they think, but their user and their customer. That's awesome. So you got this great chapter in your book, In the Magic of Change, where you tell a story about something that happened in 1912. And I'm laughing because I wasn't around then, and a lot of people weren't that's in listening to this podcast. So you got another story, don't you?
Well, I do. There are three memorable things that happened in 1912. Number one, Woodrow Wilson was elected president of the United States. Number two, that was the year the ship Titanic set sail for America, and of course never made it. I remember Dina and I went to see the movie Titanic when it was opening night, and we were standing in line there at Cinemark to get tickets, and there were a couple of 15-year-old girls in front of us, and at one point Dina turns to me and she says, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch the part where the ship sinks." One of the girls turns around and says, "Well, thanks for ruining it for us." But the third thing that all of us can relate to that happened in 1912 is the very first Oreo cookie was made up in New Jersey.
Man, I love those guys. Good for them.
I mean, how many of us remember an ice cold glass of milk and an Oreo cookie?
I still do it.
Tough. Life was tough back then. How do we eat it? Do we twist it apart and scrape the icing
it up or scrape the icing off? And now they got double thick, Tom.
Duck it in. Well, that's the point. They were the number one cookie in the world, and other cookies started eating away at their market share. Hydrox comes out with a knockoff version. Chips Ahoy starts rising in popularity. And Nabisco says, "Whoa, we need to change Oreo." Now, it's interesting. They didn't become an oatmeal raisin cookie, but they said, how can we take our cookie and make it even better? And as you just mentioned, they double stuffed. They made mini. They reversed Oreos. They had white cookie with chocolate icing. They had chocolate covered Oreos. They had Oreo pie crust, Oreo granola.
Red velvet.
Ooh, yes, red velvet. In fact, at Holiday, the icing is green, and at St. Patrick's, it's orange at Halloween, red at Christmas. They had Oreos that changed the color of the milk when you dipped it.
Yeah, I love it.
All of a sudden, Oreo is now the number one cookie in the world. Nobody's even close, because they took what they had and made it better. But here's the sweet part of that story, Herdy. It wasn't a management consulting firm. It wasn't the executives at Nabisco. The ideas initially to change Oreo and make them better came from the staff at Nabisco. Your staff, the people you work with, and your customers are chock full of ideas. Listen to them. So many times we are too quick when somebody comes up with an idea in our company, in an organization, wherever, in our family, come up with an idea. We're too quick to say, "Nope, that won't work. That's a dumb idea. No, nobody's ever tried that before. Somebody tried it and it didn't work. We don't have enough money in the budget to do that." And instead, write those ideas down. And even I can prove to you, Herdy, there's no such thing as a dumb idea. I can do it in 3 words. SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
Guy's a multi-millionaire.
Absolutely.
Who would have known? It's got to be the dumbest idea in the world.
Hey, and you know what, Tom, just to break in for a second, you know what Oreo did a couple years ago, right? They asked people to send in a video of them talking about Oreos. You know, they were going to choose one of those from the consumers across the country, right, and highlight it in their advertising program. How cool is that?
That's very cool, and very similar to what you help folks do.
Well, hey, that's okay on that, but I'll tell you this. So if you haven't understood now, listening to this podcast, that Tom's a great speaker, great storyteller, He loves to speak to groups. So Tom, who usually brings you in to speak to groups? What type of organizations do you generally talk to or speak to, I should say?
People whose organizations are going through change and they need help solving that problem. As you mentioned at the beginning, nothing decreases productivity or stands in the way of reaching profitable goals more than the fear and the stress of change.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way. They bring me in to kick off their meetings or retreats, and I use a touch of magic to get them thinking differently about change, to help them diffuse the stress and ignite some excitement about change. Boy, when folks are excited and looking forward to change and knowing that everybody's going through this together, they'll know better when to change, when to hang in there. They'll know how to avoid some costly communication pitfalls. And finally, open up great ideas. Get the team comfortable with sharing ideas that can help take them to the next level. My favorite quote, Herdy, when it comes to change is that it's not easy, but that everything in life is difficult until it isn't.
It's a great quote.
Everything in life is difficult until it isn't. Walking was difficult until it wasn't. Learning your ABCs, learning the new computer program.
Yeah, riding a bike.
There you go, writing a book. Speaking of which, the Magic of Change, the book, the subtitle is The Illusion, the Excitement, the Reward. Once you understand change is mostly an illusion, you can get excited about change and start reaping the rewards.
Now, Tom, before I ask you the next question, this would be a good time to ask you this. Where can people find the Magic of Change? Is it on one of the major bookstores online? Can they go buy it there?
Yeah, it's at Amazon.
Okay.
Or they can bring me in to speak, and I will give them a signed copy.
There you go. Perfect.
And arrange for everyone in their group to also have copies of the book.
So I'm going to throw another question at you. So what kind of changes are you personally looking to make in 2019?
Well, having spoken internationally and in 34 states, I love travel, but I would like to spend more time just right here in Central Texas. With all the changes going on from Austin down to San Antonio, there's so many companies going through change that I would like to spend more time working with those companies and kicking off their retreats or their company meetings, getting people excited and open to new ideas.
But the most important thing here, we want to make sure people have a chance to get a hold of you on this podcast is, what is the best way, Tom, for people to find you? What kind of contact?
Just to know how to spell my last name. Britton is Britton. If you've got that, then just go to tombritton.com. It's that easy.
Man, how fun was that?
That was fun.
Yeah,
it's always fun with you, Herdy.
Well, I'm not perfect at this, but I sure do love to. It sure has given me a chance over the last couple of years. I've done a lot of these podcasts, and I get to know people on a more personal level, friendship level, and it's always good. Tom, I
just want to say in closing, what a help you've been in my business, showing me how to use technology effectively in promoting the magic of change in my speaking business.
Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to 2019 too. So,
well, we're in it, ready or not. Get ready for some changes, embrace them, and profit with them.
All right, everybody. You have been listening to my friend and author, speaker, and great business guy too, by the way. Thanks for being on the Herdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network.